Hey everybody, and welcome to the amazing Las Vegas Comic-Con. I am so pleased to spend the weekend with you. You guys are the comic fans. Okay guys, this is the 7th. This is lucky number 7 that we've been in Las Vegas. I'm curious, who was here that went out to the very first amazing Las Vegas Comic-Con? All right, let's hear it. You guys are the South Pointers. You know, you guys have seen it go from a little tiny event, growing and growing and growing each year, and it's because of you guys and spreading the word to this Las Vegas fan community that truly is second to none. So I want to thank you guys for being out here, because I think that we have special events at the amazing Las Vegas Comic-Con that we celebrate pop culture. And man, I dug the MCU and the Avengers Endgame and the Infinity War. Did you guys? Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? Something that we got to think about is that there's no easy button that you just pop down and all these characters come on out and these stories come on out. I mean, you know what? It's not done in a snap, okay? But then it all comes from creators, and I think it's important that you guys see the secret origins or not so secret origins of the favorite storylines that you dig, that inspire the movies, that inspire the gear that you wear, that inspire the video games that you play, and that's why the creators matter. That's why we keep on saying the architects of pop culture, because these guys create the worlds that we love. These are the dreamers, these are the architects. And to talk this to, we have a special presentation, and this is going to be moderated by Collider. We love Collider. They are a top pop culture destination on the internet. Whether you're checking them out on YouTube, whether you're following them on social media, checking out their sites every day, go to collider.com. And from Collider, we have Coy Jondero. Coy, why don't you come on out? And why don't you tell some of the fans who we got here today?
How's it going, guys? So before I even bring these titans out, I have to say, you guys killed it with the buying of comics, because I just spent the last hour at every single, and all of the Infinity Gauntlet #1s are gone. Excellent work, you did it. So I am bringing out some of my favorite creators of all time. I cannot believe I get to do this. It is an absolute honor. I want to bring out Mr. George Perez. Next up, we've got Joseph Rubinstein. We've got Mr. Ron Lim. And last but not least, Jim Starlin. All right. Wherever you're comfy. All right. All right. So, since I've spoke with you gentlemen last, a movie came out called Endgame. And I've got to start there. Already, it just happened like a snap. It just came out. So, watching Endgame the first time, and that movie being based on not a direct property, but on characters you all know more than anyone, what was the first impression of that film and the chances it took and the bold choices? Jim, we'll start with you. How was your first impression with the insanity of a time heist?
I kept waiting for about a half hour into the movie where the really important stuff happened. This therapy session, but you know, I patiently waited through it. It was fun.
It looks so familiar. That's totally.
No, I've loved it from the moment it started. I was very worried on the first one in the Infinity War because different reasons, but like 10 seconds into it, even before the Hulk gets beat up, I went, nothing to worry about.
If you run,
What was the question?
your first impression of Endgame, like the scope.
Oh, I loved it. I mean, it veered away from the comics, so I had no idea where it was going to go. So yeah, I just love the way it turned out. Yeah.
George, how'd you like it?
I've yet to see it.
What?
That's right. Hey,
No spoilers, audience.
spoilers. I did the comic. I have an idea. But
Thanos did it.
I wait till the crowd's done.
Joe, how'd you like it?
Can you hear me? Yeah. I loved it, and I thought it was a movie. And about an hour and a half into it, they went, "Oh yeah, we have superheroes. We should start beating each other up, right?" But Jim, when you did your immortal line, was it more Stella Adler or?
What about what?
Immortal line. Or Stellar Adler.
Or Meisner? I just wondered the acting discipline.
Yeah, it was all written down at the time, so I didn't have to really think too much about it. And only blew one take.
Could we get you to do it again?
What about you?
Thank you.
Nailed it. Stanislavski method. He's got it. An actor prepared.
Get it out there.
So when you were writing these comics, it was a very different time in comics, and comic books were not quite this. Was it an interesting a moment the first time you were watching TV and a Thanos commercial popped up? Because for me, Infinity War was, a Thanos movie, and my grandma knows who Thanos is now. Was it a surreal experience when it wasn't like at a Comic-Con, it was just on TV?
Well, it was just after a Comic-Con, and I had just gotten home. And it was shortly after the Infinity War came out, and I thought, okay, this is past. I'll get back to my real life. I went outside, took a leak, came back in, watched a recorded version of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and he does a Thanos joke. And I go, this is going to last a little bit longer than I expected, isn't it?
I thought when I saw the Geico Gecko with the Infinity Gauntlet, I said, "Oh God,
I haven't seen
Jim,
that.
oh yeah, the Geico Gecko Infinity Gauntlet."
He snaps the way to savings.
I have to watch more broadcast TV. I guess.
What was the moment you all knew comics switched from being a subculture to a culture? Was there a moment in like the 70s, 80s, 90s when you realized this is about as mainstream as it gets?
Well, for me, it was the premiere of the Avengers movie, or the first one had come out, and the credits come out at the end. And all throughout the movie, there's been these two guys behind me. One was a comic book fan, and the other one was a cartoon fan. And as soon as Thanos appears, the comic book fan goes, "Thanos!" And then the cartoon fan goes, "Who's Thanos?" And I said, well, for the next year or so, this is going to get a little weird.
For you, Ron?
Just when people in general know who Thanos is,
Yeah.
it's just really weird. Because, they're generally comics fans, right? But now it's like everybody knows who he is, which is pretty cool. But yeah.
People starting to ask for Adam Warlock has been weird for me. When
Adam Warlock.
like a day-to-day person being like, when do we get Adam Warlock? How do you know that name?
I mean, for me, one of the things that when I realized that comics become broader, when you tell a person that you draw comics, they don't immediately think that you're doing the comic strips, or you say, well, I do comics. Oh, are you a comedian? When you say you're a comic book artist, and suddenly they say, oh my God! Suddenly we're treated like rock stars, And thanks, of course, to social media, we're recognized, and suddenly we've got the cool job. The nerds have the nerds inherited the earth. The geeks have won. It's wonderful.
When you tell somebody you're a comic book artist, they're never quite sure if that means you have money or not.
They always say now that they do do you get a share
Right,
of the movies? And I'm always very happy to say,
Right.
yeah. Thank you.
Right, but see,
Yeah, they pulled up a dump truck and just dumped a pile of cash on my driveway.
but I'm the next level down, because when I say I'm a comic book inker, they go, the colors?
Oh, that's like,
Right.
yeah.
No, I'm a tracer.
That's-
And they get it. Right.
That whole Chasing Amy conversation just comes right back.
Yeah.
Now, for my money, this is the biggest franchise of all time. It ran 22 movies, 11 years of build-up, and it culminated in a property that you all were responsible for. I can't imagine the scope of waking up and being like, oh, I invented Disney 3.0. Is it surreal on a day-to-day basis still, or have you kind of settled into the fact that you changed the planet? Like, you kind of manifested being Thanos of your own.
I try to keep a low profile when I'm not at one of these things here. And when I play racquetball a few times a week and at the YMCA, and when I went in to hand my card, the lady behind the desk said, this is shortly after the Infinity War, said, can you sign this book for my son? And I was going, oh man, my cover's blown. And it's been a little weird since then. Yeah. The plumber come over and brings a book with him to get signed.
Vaguely on this subject, I went to a convention last weekend in Niagara Falls, but nobody told me it was Niagara Falls, Canada, so I didn't have a passport. So I go to the border check, and I say, well, I have this letter, I'm supposed to be going to a comic book convention. Oh, and I'm really known for Wolverine, and he's Canadian, you know. And they let me in. And then on the way back, the schmuck on the other side, I went, you know, I have this letter. I don't care about a letter. I went, oh, okay. I know Thanos.
You and Hugh Jackman are the only two that can play the Wolverine immigration card.
Right. So I'm back.
I remember this was very near 9/11, and of course I was coming back from a convention. It was in Pittsburgh, and I went through the security, no problem. At that time you don't joke about it at all, and but went through the scanner, didn't set anything up. But then the guy, he was a little older than I am, and wanted to see proper identification. Don't argue, fine. Took out my driver's license, showed it to him, looks at my boarding pass, leans into me, said, I loved your interview on the Avengers DVD. I couldn't believe it. And it's becoming more commonplace. My wife and I we're celebrating our 38th wedding anniversary this month. And I think part of us being so faithful to each other, I get recognized too many places. If I'm with another woman, I'm not going to be hiding. There's going to be somebody out there saying, Mr. Perez, is this your wife? Of course, the marriage would be over. But it's amazing now how, for guys who worked in our, privately in our own studios, or in the studio system, whichever, we're working at home alone, that now we're recognized. Part of it, of course, with the internet, but the fact that we're news now. My gosh, you wouldn't be paying all these exorbitant amount of money to watch movies, to stand online, to buy the newest tchotchkes that you can buy. If it weren't for these little guys hiding in their little hovels, yes, to create comedy, yes.
What's a tchotchke?
Tchotchkes, yes.
I can picture them, but I don't know how to describe them.
That's right.
None of you on this stage have an ethnic right to tchotchkes. Jesus.
Collider, we're going to edit that out, right? We got.
By the way, were you done?
I'm done.
All right. Are you done? All right. I have a cold, as you can probably tell. I had just checked my bags in at Burbank, and this guy says to me, excuse me, can I have your autograph? And I thought, does he think I'm Ben Kingsley? And I said, who do you think I am? He said, Joe Rubinstein. Went, oh, okay. And I signed an autograph and I did a quick sketch. And then his friend popped up and went, can I have one too? I went, this is not what you expect in the real world.
I know.
Right.
It's a mini convention every time you walk in.
Yeah, right.
Is there a moment for you, Ron?
No.
Life has not changed.
Weren't you, Ron, weren't you that kid in Temple of Doom?
Hey!
Now, looking to the future, we're about to experience, phase 4, 5, and beyond, and this giant Marvel-Fox merger has happened. I really, and it's a silly thing, but I would love a Wolverine of the proper height. As a 5'8" gentleman, I'd like a heightest appropriate Wolverine.
Once you go small, you never go back.
That's the beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think the comment that when they were writing Wolverine, I think it was Chris who said, the person they envisioned was Bob Hoskins.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Is there a Wolverine you guys would like now? Is there, for me, Taron Egerton, who played Elton John recently, he's 5'7", he's feral, he's the right height. He also knows Hugh Jackman, there's tips he could get.
Wolverine's 5'2".
That's fair.
Yeah. Joe could have been Wolverine.
Joe could have. I'm not dead.
Visiting Niagara Falls, a brown suit goes on.
Right.
So with the change of comics going digital, tangible, graphic novels, they're getting in more hands than ever. It's the most accessible I think comics have ever been. How else have you seen the industry change from the inside? How is the actual comic book industry different than even like 10 years ago?
Jim?
Now all the editors think they're actually writing and drawing the books. No, it's a whole lot. I mean, the computer changed the way we color them. Corporations buying up the companies have changed the way the companies actually operate. Some of us have been in this business for 40 years, and we've seen everything change from the first black characters coming in. I mean, just everything. You can go down the list, and it's a different world as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean,
and,
I'm sorry.
better and worse.
Because one of the things that I don't know if it's for the better, it's just the way things developed, is that now we're almost like victims of our own success. That there was a time when, of course, when you come in with ideas, they want to hear a new idea, they want to hear a new concept, create a new story, as opposed to now with corporate mandating most of the things that are done in comics. Sometimes we're not creating comics, we're manufacturing comics. And sometimes they want to do another book with the familiar as opposed to something new that they have to gamble on because the stakes are so high. And, I'm not saying it's bad or not saying it's good, but it does make it different, and I do kind of miss the idea of being able to go in there and come up with an idea that they haven't heard before, and they say, let's take a chance on it, as opposed to, can we squeeze Wolverine into the story? Or can we put Batman into the story in order to guarantee sales, as opposed to let the fans decide what's successful, as opposed to corporate telling you how you should produce comics that, as Jim said, we've been doing it for over 4 decades. We seem to know what we're doing. You wouldn't have the success if we hadn't started it. And sometimes, getting people, giving you advice. Some of these guys who've never actually read the comics, have never produced the comic, and telling us how we should be producing the comics. I think I'm retiring at the right time.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Ron, keep it down. Okay. Before internet, before FedEx, everybody who did comic books lived in the New York City tri-state area. We kind of knew each other. We'd all wind up at the same parties or bars or whatever it was. Yeah. Now, the last thing I did for Marvel several years ago was 6 issues of the Fantastic Four. Not only have I never met my editor, I've never even spoken to my editor. I got an email, you want to do it? Yeah, okay. Here's another issue, here's another issue. And then I said, I live in LA now. I said, I'm going to New York, I'd like to say hi. No. I went, well, and I didn't take it personally. I went, well, I just want to come say hi. I went, oh, we don't like people coming up here.
We like making stuff over here. Shh. That's so specific. That's so strange.
Yeah.
Ron, have you seen things change from your side?
Yeah, all technology has affected it over time. I mean, so I work at home, like everybody, in a studio by myself, and I like to get calls from editors, to work on the stories I'm working on, the books I'm working on. But now, I don't get calls from anybody. It's all emails, it's all, scripts are sent to, emails to, so it's like, so I don't talk to anybody now, so it's even more quiet than it was before. but it's a lot faster. It's a lot faster now.
And that concludes the old coots complaining about the young whippersnapper segment of our kind.
And Ron, congratulations for finally being in the old Coots Club.
Thank you.
What's a coot?
There's a vocab lesson at the end of this interview for all these. So
Google it.
What's a Google?
now we're also seeing the world change, and like conventions are becoming more as mainstream as the comics are. Like you're talking about manufacturing versus mainstream. But I'm seeing it start to kind of shift back to comic books with conventions like this that are so comic book based. Is there anything that you, from the time of the 70s, 80s, if you could Thanos snap, what you would bring back? Is there something that you would change in the industry right now to make it the standard again? Movies, TV, comic, anything.
Well, for me, the fact that like this convention, I like the idea that, yes, they have media guests, but never at the expense of the comics creators. Wherein, like, I've seen too many shows where you kind of, it's called a comic book show, but sometimes you feel like this is your party and you're being put into the kiddie table. And I think you're kind of forgetting, again, it happens with almost all media, when it becomes so successful that the people who are the grunts working there are sometimes forgotten. No, you wouldn't be here without us. And I like the idea of like this show where, Jimmy J, who runs the show, he has celebrity guests from films, from other media, and the comic guests, and we're all treated equally. The voice actors, the comic book people, the on-screen talent. That's what I want for more of the shows, as opposed to just a lot of fans who, they say, oh, we love Comic-Cons, but never read a comic. I'd like to see that feeling of respect for everyone involved in the field, and I think that it can be done. This show shows that it can still be done. But some shows have just gotten so big that they basically are a gigantic media trade show.
Right.
And I feel lost to there.
I've been to a lot of conventions where there's a green room for the actors, the celebrities, who are getting $100,000 a weekend, so apparently can't afford to buy their lunch. And then there's the comic book people. You guys figure it out, and if you die, you die. We already have your work.
Thanks for the inspiration. There's a sparkly vampire in the other room. Not to name names. So I personally love the way you guys built the Infinity, all of the world of Infinity is the depth of the comics. And to me, that's the art, the ink, the words. There's literal depth in every panel of this book. And one of my favorite things about this entire series is all the characters look different. And that's so hard with team books. And that's so hard with writing characters that voices sound different. And especially in a book that is most characters, how did you guys collaborate to make the inks, the colors, the dialogue? How did it differentiate so all the characters felt separate?
Basically, we didn't collaborate at all, did we? I mean, he was out in California. I'm in New York. George, I didn't even know he was coming in on the project. And
the script he gave was a full script.
Yeah.
So Jim had it pretty much all worked out. He even had panels. So just remember, Jim's an artist, so of course he's thinking visually. So when I came into the project, my job is to bring Jim's vision to fruition, but also to add my own identity to it. So when I worked with Marv would give me a very relatively loose plot because that was our working relationship. I had never worked with Jim before. So my job was to do everything that Jim wanted, but do it differently without losing Jim's vision. And to me, that was a great
he succeeded.
challenge. I enjoyed it. And of course, I made most of my career doing team books. If I was going to draw Captain America, it's a Captain America I know. So I wanted to look like Jack Kirby or Romita, filtered through me. Same thing with all the other characters. Try to find the artist whose vision of the character was the one resonated with me, and then just filter it through my stuff so they all look like different characters. And thankfully, then when Joe came in to ink it, Joe has this lush, realistic inking style, which made the characters look even more lifelike to me. So,
Thank you. Hey,
Yeah,
Jim.
for me, I mean,
I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to say, following George, first of all, I was scared. But what was great was Joe was able to kind of unify the artwork
Yes.
since he inked it all. So, whatever differences we had would kind of like more unified by your inks. Yeah.
so the short answer is we sort of blundered our way
Right.
into a classic.
Hey, Jim, when you wrote the script, I know you care, but did you have an artist in mind? Did you hope they'd get somebody? Did you ever think, I'll call up John Buscema and ask him if he wants to take the book?
I figured Ron was going to be carrying on.
Because from the Silver
because he
Surfer?
had just done Thanos Quest and that, and George, literally, you came out of left field on me. 'Cause-
yes, I was surprised when I was asked, because I too thought that it should have gone to Ron.
Yeah, I mean, I was not complaining or anything. Well,
Yeah.
he's a great artist, but
But
where'd he come from?
But it was wonderful. For me, I was overcommitted. So by the time I was doing Infinity Gauntlet, I was deeply involved also with War of the Gods over at DC, and I was writing that and trying to coordinate it because unfortunately my editor went on maternity leave, so I had to try to coordinate a lot of stuff there, and it affected my being able to handle Infinity Gauntlet. So when Tom DeFalco, the editor, said that to let Ron finish issue 4 and I can start on issue 5, I thought, Ron really should have been given this book to begin with. Let Ron finish the series. I'll ink Ron's cover so they don't think I left in a peak and and I was angry at anybody. But I honestly thought, when people give me credit, I love the way you drew the Infinity Gauntlet. Then I was following the designs these guys did. All I did was interpret. These are the guys who did the creating, and I was glad when Ron was able to get what I thought was properly his. So and you did a great job.
Hey, Ron, were we still doing the Silver Surfer at that point together?
No.
I always wondered how I got this book. I wondered who.
Well, you started on my Surfer.
Yeah, I know, I just wondered, it was Brad Anderson was our editor, right, for all the thing?
Craig, yeah.
Craig, yeah. I always wondered how this happened. I really do. When you offered me the Avengers annual, so I remember that. My first Marvel job was the Avengers annual 2-in-1, which is where Thanos originally fights the Avengers.
Yeah, I used to give things out all the time.
Right, not this sequel thing.
And then the next and the next. What was the original phone call like, or not email? What was the original call like for this long? How did they pitch this book? We need a mega event book. Invent a new big bad. It's gonna change everything. How did this come to be in the very beginning?
Well, they had the Silver Surfer and it wasn't selling well, and they talked me into coming in and writing it, and it started selling better. And so they said, at the time, this guy named Michael Perlman bought the company, and anything they could do to soak more money out of the readership, they were going to do. This is a time where every X-Men had its own book practically. So they said, well, the Silver Surfer's doing well, let's do some kind of special project involving the book. And I went, how about Thanos? And they were kind of hesitant about that at first, and they said, well, he's the one who's making the book sell again, so let's do that. And we didn't even get the first book penciled, I think, before they said, the advanced sales on this are doing so well, let's do another project. And at that point, I said, well, we'll do a big mini-series. And they said, oh, good, we'll cross it over. And that's where all the shit hit the fan. Because none of the editors wanted me to touch their characters. At that time, I had a reputation of killing people. And so nobody wanted me to, especially the X-Men editor. He said, no X-Men. And so we had to wrestle and negotiate, and we eventually got that, I think, Wolverine and Cyclops. And the books went out, and they sold well, and the next thing we did was the Infinity War. And at that point, they wanted every character, every editor wanted their book to cross over. We were having to add characters we had no idea who they were. There was one called Sleepwalker. Does anybody remember Sleepwalker? Yeah, two. There, maybe 3 people. They said, he's got to be in this book. So I wrote him in just walking through the sky in the background in one panel.
Sleepwalker is the extra of the Marvel Universe.
So it was a strange little trip to get to where we actually got moving.
Was there a moment for any of you during the making of this book that surprised you? That something like a moment of inspiration, a moment of change, mid-panel that you didn't expect to come out of your fingers?
I opened up the package and there's Ron Lim pages there. That was kind of surprising. Nobody told me. Here's your pages.
Again, for me, the most surprised, full script as I was going. The one thing I was the most proud of, because I got on the book when I was offered it. I asked, well, how many characters are going to be in it? Is that all? Again, you add more in there, But again, the script. But my proudest thing was when Jim wrote The Snap, and Jim paced it this way. I wanted to do something a little different, so the entire build-up of it, where I would take one panel that Jim had written, I would then change it into 2 or 3 to kind of build up momentum. And then I don't know where the inspiration came when I finally had the snap to suddenly make it into a shadow with the snap effect becoming a negative space there. I was kind of proud of myself there because I wasn't in the script. He just said he snapped his
The
fingers.
silhouette surprised me too, pleasantly.
Yeah, I'm glad because it was one of those type of things. Yeah, it was such an important event. I wanted to find some way to make it even more intense than than Jim had done, and hope that Jim would see that when I ended the artwork, I didn't just follow blindly. Although I would have done well doing that as well, because again, he's a storyteller. But the fact that I wanted to give him a little more than he wrote, because that's my job, I felt. And I was so happy that he was happy with it too. And everyone commented on the snap, you know?
And now that moment is, everyone knows the snap is like one of the most pop culture, it's like Darth Vader and your father.
And it took us only less than 15 pages to do what it took a 2.5-hour movie to do. The snap, I was sitting with a friend of mine watching the premiere, and she said, wow, what a build. I said, honey, I got that done in 15 pages. We just sat here 2.5 hours watching this build up to this one moment that was just the start of the series. Of course, and I didn't know at the time when I watched Infinity Wars that it was only that was a part 1, that they were going to be continuing. So I thought, they ended the movie this way? Oh my God, how depressing.
But you got to remember, we had 40 years of comic books before then that we were building up to.
That's right.
So.
Now, what character in any medium, comic, TV, film, do you love that you don't feel like gets enough love? Like, I love Chamber from Generation X, and no one knows who that is. But is there a character that you think, like 5'2" Wolverine, or like an authentic, is there a character you want to be more mainstream that isn't yet? Like these Sleepwalker fans. A character that you love that isn't as mainstream. Like if you could like promote a character that to a more mainstream figure.
Thankfully, having drawn everybody, that's pretty much a non-issue for me. I can't choose one of my children. But one character, which of course no one expected me to do, which despite the fact that it's not the book that I'm earning all my great income, although I am earning money on it, was to prove that I could make Wonder Woman work. You know, because it was a book that I didn't realize after Moulton and Peters were no longer doing the book. No one ever volunteered to do that book. I was the first artist to volunteer to do Wonder Woman. And despite the success of the Titans, the Infinity Gauntlet and all the offshoots from that, the fact that I went into a party, it was actually a wedding for some friends who were in the Hollywood business, and all these female executives coming over and thanking me for Wonder Woman, even though I didn't create the character, but the fact that she was a character, like, and there are a lot of characters out there that people think will never succeed, and that was a personal triumph. Despite, you know, the Titans and everything else, Wonder Woman was the one character I took because I felt sorry for her. And I did not want her just to languish, and I'm so grateful now that the
Patty Jenkins and like that whole world is
my favorite compliment of all. I mean, you know, and there are those who were negative about it because of changes I made. That's when they say they changed the stuff you made in the movie. I said, well, I changed stuff when I did the comic. But when William Marston's granddaughter came up to me, and Phil Jimenez introduced us, and she said, "You honored my grandfather." That is the best compliment I will ever take. That trumps them all, and I'm very, very proud of that.
So I'm going to open it up to you guys now. We've got a question cube, which is not a thing I've ever used before. So any questions you guys have, who's got a question, I'm going to throw it to you, and then you can toss it to whoever else has a question. This is a nice safe toss for liability. I like that.
It's a Nerf ball game.
Do I say, oh, hi, yes.
The future.
So what are your thoughts on...
Sweet.
Yeah, that's amazing.
The mother box.
Figures Vegas, it's a cube, right? We throw it. The cosmic part. I mean, that's what was so amazing about what you developed was the cosmic battle, issues 4 and 5, when, you know, all of a sudden you're now bringing in the big entities of the universe. Do you see that working into the MCU? Do you have kind of an idea of where that might go?
Actually, in the first script that they drafted for the Infinity War, all of the cosmic entities were in there. And Marvel Entertainment said it's too early to introduce all these abstract characters. That's why Mistress Death is not in the thing. I figure after a couple more of this guy, Doctor Strange's movies, we'll start getting some of these in there. But basically, they said you got to pull out all the really, really cosmic stuff. And, you know, they had 20 movies they had to fix up, and I think their original script was like 200 pages long, which would have been more than a 3-hour movie. So I think they'll eventually get into it, but that's why you haven't seen them at this point yet.
Okay, so this one is specifically for Jim. Since you had a cameo in Endgame, since you had a
Spoil
cameo
it for
in
me. I didn't see the
Endgame-
movie.
Sorry. Being able to be a part of the culmination of these 22 movies and everything that you guys did with the actual Infinity Gauntlet saga, what was it like being able to be there and be a part of the final movie in Phase 3 and in the Infinity Saga?
Well, the whole experience so far has been very surreal. And when I went down to work on the movie, I expected to be sitting somewhere in the background silently while things were going on in the front. Instead, they handed me a script as soon as I got in there. I wasn't on the best of terms with Marvel Editorial at this point, so I wasn't expecting nice things. But it turned out that everybody on the set, from the screenwriters to the Joe Russo's, they all wanted to sit there and tell me everything. So I knew just about everything before a year and a half before the movie came out. And so I've been having to keep my mouth shut during that whole time. So now I never shut up. But it's been fun. It has all been good so far.
So my question is for all of you. Just wondering if any of you guys actually worked with or collaborated with or actually met Stan Lee, and if he had any influences in your lives and your careers and things that have happened with you. That's my main question.
Okay, I'll start with my Stan Lee story. I started off doing cover layouts for other artists to actually draw, like John Buscema and Gil Kane. And every day I would get a set of Xerox and come up with a sketch out of what I saw in the Xeroxes. And then Stan would come in at noon, and he would look through them and he'd go, "Great, great, great, but." And he would take off his glasses, he would set them on the chair, and then he would crawl up onto his desk and he would act out, because Stan was a frustrated actor, if nobody's figured that out already. And he would act out how he would want the figure to be. And about 1 out of every 5 times, and I would sit here quietly to watch to see what would happen, he would then get off the desk and sit on his glasses. He would then reach over, hit his intercom, which they had back in those days, and he said, "Holly, I did it again." And she would run in with a new set of glasses, hand them to him, take the other one away, and we would go on from there.
That is the best cameo I've never seen. That's amazing.
Oh, I never worked with Stan, but obviously influenced by his work, obviously from all those years. But yeah, so that's my short story.
Okay, Ron is very succinct. Shortest name among us, and it lives up to it. My Stan story was like, I had just finished, they just printed my first Fantastic Four. And I also credit a lot of the success of that to the great inker Joe Sinnott, who had been inking this Fantastic Four for so many years on so many different artists, after Jack Kirby as well. And I got a call from Holly, Stan's secretary, saying that Stan wanted to meet me. And of course, it's like, I was born and raised Catholic, so I'm being asked to have a meeting with the Pope. So I went over and Stan saw my work on Fantastic Four, looked at the credit, they were expecting to see Buscema or Romita's name, never saw this name before, and he called me in and said, as long as you're working here, you're always going to have as long as I'm alive, you're always going to work it here. And Stan gave me my first raise. And in addition to that, I was so awestruck at the idea I'm meeting Stan Lee. I actually brought books for Stan to sign at a business meeting that he was asking me to come to. And I just got so tickled by the fact that, this was Stan, never Mr. Lee. That I was in a job where the head guy, the guy who, that everything has to go through, you call him by his first name. It was a wonderful, friendly experience, and I'd seen Stan obviously many times since then, and Lord knows I changed a lot from a 20-year-old to a 65-year-old, and Stan always remembers me. And one of the great joys of Stan is that one of the last things he said to me at a convention was, I love comics. I obviously always love comics. But I also love the fans, and I've always liked to be with the fans and be entertaining. And Stan says, "You're like my nephew. That's what I want. This is what I always wanted. The relationship that people should see that comics are fun, and if we don't enjoy it, how can we expect them to enjoy it?" And so when he died, I sobbed. I actually cried, thinking that I just lost my Uncle Stan. So that's my Stan.
Hi. I was working up at Marvel when I was 19 on Mr. Starlin's Avengers Annual. I think I was in a side office because it was the summer and it was hot and they had air conditioning. So I'm working, and all of a sudden, the door bursts open and Stan Lee walks in. And I'm just like you. He's, oh my God, it's Stan Lee. And they were doing these black and white comic books back then with painted covers. So Stan came in with a board with one of these painted covers, right? So he goes in, he puts it on the floor to look at it. He does this and puts his elbow right into my ink. And I think to myself, well, that was a short career. I mean, I enjoyed it for what it was, and I was hoping for a little more longevity, but and so I'm going, uh-oh. I either don't say a word, and a couple of hours from now he goes, hey, or I do say a word and he fires me on the spot. And I go, Mr. Lee, you put your elbow into my ink, and he went, it happens all the time.
At least my glasses are still in one piece.
Right. And then I stepped on his glasses. Okay.
Where's the cube of power? There it is, cosmic cube.
This is a little weird.
You're talking into its butt.
It's a cube. I don't know. But this is for all four of you, even the panel guy. Since Stan's gone, who would you want to be the new cameo besides yourselves? Would you want Deadpool or Wolverine, or would you want to be the next Stan Lee cameo guy?
I think Roy Thomas would kill to do this, and would kill any of us who would even try to get in there.
Because I love looking for Stan. I love looking for all of you guys, and I'm hoping that George Perez makes an appearance in CW's Infinite Crisis.
He's busy.
With my luck, I'll be one of the people killed in Infinite Crisis. Infinite Crisis storyline.
Perez was doing both DC and Marvel at the same time with Crisis and Infinity Gauntlet. It would be cool to see him do a dual cameo.
Well, again, that's a decision made by other people. If
I know.
If I'm asked, I'd be flattered. And if I'm not asked, life goes on. I'm fine.
There was a TV show on HBO called Entourage, and they had an episode set at San Diego Comic-Con. And they bought my artwork for it and asked me if I wanted to be in the show. It's the dullest thing in the world to be on a TV show and hours in a make-believe studio and all that. But once, they also bought my artwork for The Big Bang Theory in the episode where Stan's signing in a comic book store like that's ever going to happen, right? And I'm standing out in front in the line waiting for Stan's autograph, and I'm standing behind two of the stars of the show. And they yelled cut, and they put a tall guy between me and the other guys because I look too much like those guys.
So your cameo's already out there.
Yeah.
This is a cliche answer, but for me, the opening comic panels of a Marvel movie, I see these guys. Like, the panels flipping is always the comics to me, so my answer is like, this is the world of comics, so it's already like represented, so as long as that happens, I'm happy. Where's the cube? We got time for one more.
Somebody stole the cube.
Yeah, the cube is gone.
It's a Tesseract.
Whoever's the most excited. There's up. I see a hand. We got excitement. We got two hands. We got movement. All right.
Oh, you lost an eye. Okay.
You had your chance. You missed the catch.
You fumbled.
You're cut.
Hello. All right. So what is your favorite comic book creator of all time? Who did you guys
Jack
look
Kirby.
up to? Okay.
Same.
I'm sorry, I can't choose among my parents.
Right.
No, Jack, but also Neil Adams, Kurt Swan. They're just way too many. I mean, we were all a product of an incredible mixture of influences. And I mean, Jack brought excitement. He was to me like a Salvador Dali of comics. But then I also respected like Kurt Swan as the Norman Rockwell of comics, the remorse to date. So there are a lot of people out there.
A Jack Kirby two-page spread was wondrous and panoramic, and there's no denying he's probably the greatest comic book artist ever. But when I look at Joe Kubert, a Tarzan fighting a gorilla with that fur flying and the slashes across the body, that would take my breath away.
Thank you guys so very much. Let's give it up for these titans of Mad Titans.